All systems go. Clear for liftoff.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Monday afternoon. I'm with my man BJ. No Rio today. Usually no Rio, or actually Rio has been on Mondays, I believe. Schedule change this week with NFL back. It is usually going to be Ham and BJ Monday, Fridays. Me and Rio Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Then, of course, BJ's been doing the quick hit on Saturday, Slate playing, etc. So we are adding Thursday. But again, as us four, we have stuff going on in life. We'll always be helping each other out. So you will see a combination of us every single weekday on any slates, 4-game or more. I'm very excited to talk some basketball with my man BJ. Very much respect what you do in the basketball streets, the baseball streets. See you up at the top of the DFS leaderboards a good bit. BJ, I'll throw it to you right now. How are you doing, my man? I hope you're not frozen. Can you hear me? How you doing?
There we go. Hey. There we go. Hey, am I good now?
Yeah, I think you're good now. Try it.
Damn, I apologize, guys. You know, we've been good on the connection streets the last couple months. California, we're getting a little bit of rain, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I promise I pay the bills. But yeah, man, jacked up to talk about this 10-game slate. If for some reason I start bugging out, let me know, title. But I think we should be good to go here moving forward.
Yep. Hey, it sounds good right now. So can't wait to talk some hoops. Big boy slate. 10 games on DraftKings, 12 on FanDuel, couple starting at 7, couple games at 7:30, 8, then 8:30 p.m. A solid night slate. Showdown contest look, okay, like usual. But again, the main slate, 10 games. Now with NFL pretty much behind us. Obviously just one showdown Super Bowl game. I'm expecting big boy prizes in the NBA moving forward with that. The main focus for DraftKings. Before we do go game by game, gotta always say hi to people in chat. Wins a lot. Roddy, Sean Sullivan, Lyle, Ricky, Michael W., Jason, Parabai, Camden, Gangrene, Matt, Easy Bets, Nate D, Hebrew Cheetah, what's going on? Kid Akron, Michael, Riri, Russell, Casey, Mr. Mike's daddy, Russell. Oh, Russell gets it twice today. Wanted to shout out every single one. I don't think I missed anything. Big Ed, Danny, Luis, William, Mercier in here. Appreciate every single one watching. All we ask, like button, subscribe button, helps us out a ton. If you do want to join us at the Nation, we have no better time to do it. Why? We haven't had a deal this good. Ship 50 gets you 50% off your first month. Does include Shiptimizer if you want it as well. Obviously, NFL winding down, only one game left. Huge prize pools, though, out there. We'll have you covered for that. But NBA in full force. Next thing you know, NASCAR will be back. MMA has 8 straight weeks. PGA, back in full force. Weights management coming up pretty soon. NHL, of course, can't forget Nades and the crew. So no better time. Get over Ship 50 if you want to give us a try. That does include the Discord. Gets you $50 off your first month. Broad slate overview for me. We were talking a little pre-show. I mean, the injury report is just a laundry list of questionable tags. Again, a lot of the start times are pretty condensed, so I'm hoping we get a decent amount before lock. Obviously, projections, everything updates throughout. But right now, value looks pretty tough on this slate, especially when there's a 12K guy in Jokic that maybe should be $14,000 back in the Westbrook territory playing some of the best ball I've ever seen anybody play. Jokic looks like a phenomenal spend, but that does mean you need some value. Value looks tough. So I'm looking right now, I think, builds Jokic and then a lot of mid-tier-ish, value-ish kind of. But again, a lot of Q tags. 1 Q tag, 2 Q tags can open a bunch of stuff up. Any broad slate overview before we go game by game?
No, man, completely agree with it. You know, everybody has like their circles they chat with about DFS. And, you know, and the other day on the phone with my buddy, I'll say, man, I have to play Joker every time until he's like 13-5. And you just look at that list of games, even when he doesn't get his fourth quarter run, absolute smash spots. But yeah, broad slate. I mean, you know, personally, like self-reflecting on my game over the last couple of weeks, I get so narrowed in. I think Parabay was talking about it in the Discord before we hopped on, but on these bigger slates, you get so narrowed into these plays, just like the rest of the field, that I think on a slate like this, we have the potential to get a little different and kind of get some of these different game stacks that don't look appealing because, 10 games, just one simple swap or two simple swaps can mean so much from a dollar amount perspective. So excited to kind of get a little off the wall on some of these plays. I think we are going to have the opportunity to get creative with value. But like you said, I mean, we got some time, and I think it's going to be a crazy hour or so before lock and during that first start of games to where we're going to be moving a lot of stuff.
100%. Yeah, that's always the case really for NBA, especially as the more games we have on the slate like this. But it's just so many Q tags. Again, a lot of them thankfully start within the first hour, which is nice. And again, projections, everything updated throughout. That is very important because, again, it could be one or two guys are out. Then no value right now becomes we have a very, very strong value. So there's too many injuries to list right now, all the Q tags. We're going to go game by game, start with the first game of the night, Lakers Hornets, and I will read the injury reports like always. So let's get into it. No time to waste. 10 games. Yeah, Jimmy's definitely done in Miami, though. He got suspended indefinitely. And I know Jay's
I know we got 10 games, but how crazy is this whole situation? I mean, God,
wild.
man, like he gets to 7 games, comes back for 2. This is just one of those things. I didn't see the suspension indefinitely, but you just have to get him out of the building, right?
Yes. Oh, 100%. I mean, I know Pat Rott, he doesn't want to probably give Jimmy what he wants, but at the end of the day, you want something in return. And it's just, I mean, it's like cancer right now. It's just such a mess. Get him out, move on from the whole situation, and start moving forward is how I see it. It's not doing anyone any good. But all right, let's talk some DFS. The first game of the night, we have the Los Angeles Lakers and the Charlotte Hornets. We have a 222 total. Lakers 5-point favorites. Injury report on the Lakers side. Rui was ruled out a little bit ago. We're expecting Dorian Finney-Smith to start. As you can see on the stone, this is the stone over here at SHIPIT Nation. We have it for all sports. Charlotte side, no Cody Martin. Otherwise, no injuries there. So no Q tags in this first one at 7 Eastern. As far as ownership we're looking at, not really looking at too much on either side. Actually, ownership looks to be bugging a little bit on the stone. So I'm gonna hit up our team over there. I think maybe right now we're talking lack of value. Max Christie, guard and forward eligibility, only 4K. Again, having guard and forward eligibility definitely big on a slate like this. 4K. There's not many cheapies that are too appealing. Starting shooting guard helps you get Jokic. Start with the Lakers side and Christie. He looks like the most interesting spot. And then LaMelo looks like a contrarian spend if you do want to spend other than Jokic. So break this one down.
Yeah, no, I agree. As I alluded to in the slate plan, this is going to be one of those games that doesn't appeal to others that I'm, kind of going to lean and like a little bit more. I think from the value perspective, I think over Christie, I think, DFS obviously is going to get the start, but I'm interested in some Dalton Connect, Westside Connect at 3,200. Recently hasn't really shown it, but we know his scoring upside off the bench. This is going to be more of a 20-50 lineup type play. But from a game stacking perspective, this is interesting to me. I love the AD spot. Since Mark Williams is there, they've been better defensively. If you look back at the last couple of weeks, the Hornets are actually ranking in the top 5 of some of these categories, even taking away transition. But I just love the combos. I love the combos of getting an AD and LaMelo and getting off of that Joker chalk. I know we're talking about the Lakers side, but when you jump to the Hornets side, I mean, with Miller out, I mean, this is just the ball and Bridges show. I mean, if you watch that game, nobody else is really shooting the basketball. LaMelo put up 13 threes last time out, obviously didn't hit very many. And it was a blowout and still almost scored 50. So this is just kind of a game where I'm playing I think LaMelo is going to want to play well at home versus the Lakers. I do like him as a contrarian option with triple double upside. The Bridges stuff at 7,700, the price is there a little bit and it's kind of getting up. But I mean, like I said, it's either LaMelo or it's Bridges shooting the basketball. We can find ourselves in some positions where we are game stacking and Bridges does get hot from the 3-point line. A lot of those assists are going to come from LaMelo. which are, are 5-point plays on DraftKings. So those are huge if you are stacking the game. But that's kind of where I stand. I mean, I like AD solo, but if you are going to get multiple pieces, it's just game stack only for me. Sorry to kind of jump back and forth, but Reeves is a little too expensive in my opinion. 222 total. It's kind of in that middling for a slate that has almost a 250 over under, but a low ownership. If you're making multiple lineups, I'm really going to like this game as a whole from a game stack perspective.
Awesome breakdown. I wanted to give you a shout out too. My man Rio, I was just with him in this past weekend. He's brought it up multiple times to you, but really, really impressed with, obviously Rio, as good as it gets, digs into all the advanced stats and metrics there. You do very similar stuff as well. So I just wanted to give you a shout out. You're on the slate plan today. You do the Saturday slate plan, the Saturday quick hits, always have the core reports, but your knowledge and in-depth, I was very impressed with your baseball stuff, basketball. Very, very good stuff. Again, shout out to Rio, always grinding. You gave him a shout out in Discord today, but you're top notch with your breakdowns, your in-depth stuff. So I love this. Love your breakdown. Wanted to give you some props where it's due. What about a couple things like a Dorian Finney-Smith? I know Nick Smith has got some ownership recently. Not really sure about there, but the value. I know you mentioned Dalton Connect. Is he your favorite value in this game? Dorian Finney-Smith, if he does start, can you get there to help you get like a LaMelo, AD, stuff like that? Or is there better value? Obviously, it's just game 1 of 10 that we'll talk about later.
Yeah, no, first of all, appreciate the shout out, just trying to get as much knowledge as I can to everybody, but I definitely appreciate that. These are going to be like second tier value pieces in my opinion. Like we're going to get to some stuff later that, is going to be like slate hinging news, with some other value pieces in the Nance stuff, the Wallace stuff. And I think I'd much rather go to those guys. But it's just 3,200. Scoring potential off the bench. The Smith Jr. stuff, not really, because when Ball and Bridges are back, I believe he got 20 minutes last time out, and he's just not getting the shots that he did when both those guys were out. So these are all going to be like secondary, like multiple lineup type value plays, in my opinion.
I love it. We'll get to the next game. Gang Green has me dying. A little wraparound. Hey, got to give props where they're due. Absolutely. But Gang Green, appreciate you making me laugh right there. Let's get to the second game of 7. So ownership actually was updated. I scrolled down a little bit. The Max Christie I thought would maybe come up a little, but that shows how low owned this game will be right here. Not many going to play Charlotte or Lakers, and I don't expect that really to change. Again, the spend ups with Jokic will take away AD and LaMelo ownership. The value, there's some better later, and there's no Q tags in this game. So if there's no surprise out tag, I don't think any value really opens up in this one. So not much ownership to start. Second game at 7 p.m. Eastern is the Detroit Pistons and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cavs big favorites at 11, 235 total. So one of the bigger on the slate. Man, the Pistons are playing good ball, but that just shows how good the Cavs are and how much respect they're getting at home. Injury report on this one, Tobias Harris is questionable. That is one of the bigger Q tags on the slate. Obviously, we will get it before lock. Cleveland side, no Dean Wade, no Karis LeVert, no Isaac Okoro. Looking at ownership for this on the Stone, you see Jalen Duren get a little bit at center. Ty Jerome coming off what a monster game a couple nights ago. All these nights are blending in, especially with football and everything. But I don't know if it was like a 47 piece.
Yeah, he almost dropped 50. He had like 8 threes, I think it was, or something crazy like that.
Ty Jerome, look at him getting it done. 4,200, I do think, as we're showing on the Stone, could get some ownership. Again, keep saying the lack of value on the slate, and there is studs you do want to play. Is it chasing? I'm curious to hear your thoughts there. I have a little interest in Max Strus. The dude can absolutely shoot the ball. Shooting guard, small forward eligible, which is very nice on this slate. I think he can put up 6, 7 threes in this one, coming off a 30-point game. DraftKings point, that is, last time he did get to 34 minutes. He almost never gets that many minutes, so I'll throw it to you on this. Like, what is Strus, like, without Karis LeVert, Strus, Jerome, what's their minutes, like, projection, would you say? If we're getting 34 minutes of Strus, sign me up all day. So start with the Cavs side and then get to Detroit.
Yeah, if that is the case for Strus, absolutely at 4,400. The Ty Jerome stuff, I wouldn't call it chasing. That's going to be kind of the field getting to that creative value that we talked about and we've talked about in the past. He followed up his 8 for 8 game from the 3-point line with 33 real life. with 18 minutes versus Houston, obviously a much tougher matchup, going 0 for 5 from 3. So, they're shooters that could go in. But, both of these guys, I mean, yeah, Strus, if he gets that many minutes, absolutely. And I anticipate this game to stay a little bit closer. It's pretty tough, though, because you see the total, you kind of want to get to it. Cade's priced up. Obviously, if Tobias is out, the Thompson stuff is good. But the Cavs, defensively have ranked near the bottom over the last week or two. Obviously, some of that's going to be the Mobley stuff being off the floor. But I did see something on Twitter. I can't really go back and see, but Allen, I think, is getting a little fatigued down low. So we've talked about this. I've for sure talked about it with Ham. Maybe I mentioned it on a show with Rio. But these Cavs, like, they're priced for blowouts. And if we anticipate this game to stay closer just because their defense has been a little bit worse, I'm going to want to get to these guys like, Mitchell at 86, Garland at 78. These are going to be considered good matchups for them against the Pistons. Mobley's price coming down a little bit. Okay. Not going to get to Allen at 68. But the Strus stuff at 44, if he is going to get that many minutes, absolutely sign me up. And then to kind of answer your question going back, I think we are chasing a little bit / creative value with Ty Jerome. So I'm going to be off that. And then I know we didn't really talk much about the Pistons, so I'll kind of start there, and then you could chime in if you have any opinions on it. But if Tobias Harris is out, Thompson at 48 is going to be interesting. We've seen him kind of, the low to mid 20s. I don't believe before last game he played more than 26 minutes over the last couple of weeks. But he did play, I believe it was 30 when Tobias Harris was out of that game. I would anticipate him being in that mid to high 20s again today. And if that's the case, he's going to be really interesting at 48. And then the last guy I'll just kind of chime on before I pass it back to you is going to be Cade at 10.5. Like, big boy price tag. He's $100 more expensive than Anthony Davis. But the guy knows how to print 50 bombs. And if we're going to go into this game, assuming Cavs defense over the last couple of weeks has really been that bad, they're going to need somebody to score to keep this game close. And I'll highlight him.
I mean, his usage in the past 4 games, 45, 40, 40, 41. That is insanity. Playing upper 30s minutes. The one hesitation, I guess, a little bit is, there's big boy studs to pay on the slate. We keep mentioning Jokic. Just the previous game, the first game, we had AD and we had LaMelo. Obviously, LaMelo and Cade just point guard eligible in the same price range. If you had to pick one of those two, who do you think you'd prefer?
I'm sorry, between Cade and LaMelo?
Correct.
I'm going to go LaMelo just because I like that game stack a little bit more. I think he has a triple-double upside. I believe if he's going to shoot double-digit threes, he has extreme upside there. So I'm going to lean LaMelo, but I wouldn't hate you if you went Cade.
I agree there, too. The game environment just scares me a bit. You did mention the Cavs have been one of the worst defensive teams in the past week.
Yeah, like 29th over the last, week and a half.
Wow, that does. Cade is going to be super. We got him at 2%. Anytime you have that usage, it feels more like I'd have to probably play 20-plus teams to get there. It's a big boy price tag. The value on the slate isn't great, but that usage is, it's second to none for sure. What really stands out is Azur Thompson. I think if Tobias is out, he probably becomes one of the most popular value plays on the slate at 4,800. I think he's even fine if Tobias plays in this game. Just the lack of value we really have. Not like the highest usage guy, but he can fill it up. The peripherals, 29 minutes last game, 31 DK points, 24 minutes, 26 DK points, 22 minutes, 22 DK. He's like a point per minute guy, maybe even a little more. 4,800. No Tobias, I think, would be huge for him in the field, would jump on him more. But again, I'm fine. If Tobias is in, I think he's still a very strong, solid play at that price tag. Small forward, power forward, eligibility. Jalen Duren, did you mention him a little bit? Center, again, is pretty strong. It's more so, I guess, you can definitely go Jokic, Duren. But if you're spending for like a LaMelo, a Cade, not a center spend up, I think Duren makes a lot of sense more in that mid-tier. Thoughts on him?
Yeah, I would say that'd be more if you were looking to kind of play on the narrative that Allen is a little fatigued on the other side. Those are some tough guys to go up against in the paint in Mobley and Allen, just size, in general. But I do like him. It is tough with all the centers that we have. And if our ownership is correct at 13%, I think I'd be off of him. I would be more inclined to play him at like sub 10%, 7%, 6%, just to get a little different from the field. But if we find ourselves in a position where we get to lock and he's 17, 16, 15% on, I think I'm off that train.
Makes a lot of sense. I like it. The last name I was going to mention was Tim Hardaway. But, man, the usage is like he has to be really efficient with his shooting. Like his role in this offense, catch and shoot. Cage is so ball dominant. I'm not really sure I really want to get to Tim Hardaway. He does have guard forward eligibility, but I think I'd prefer Max Christie in that last game if I had to pick. Any final thoughts?
I was just about to say that. I'd rather go Christie than Hardaway.
I like it. On the same page. Let's keep it rolling. 2 games down. 10 to talk about. Next game. This one should be pretty good. I'm excited for this one. Boston Celtics, real life wise at least. Boston Celtics, Houston Rockets. Boston 6.5 point favorites. 222 total. On the Houston side, Cam Whitmore is questionable. Curious to hear your thoughts. If he does miss, what that does. Boston side, one of the bigger injury news on the slate. Derek White, questionable. Al Horford's also questionable. Sam Hauser is questionable. Derek White, one of the bigger injury news. Tobias Harris, one of the bigger injury news on the slate. This game is at 7:30, so 30 minutes after lock. I still do expect to get this news. If all the Q-tags are in, mainly it's Derek White, I think this game will probably be the lowest owned on the slate. And you can see it in our ownership here. Nobody above 7%. When I said I was excited, that's why I had to circle back and say for real life, I think the Houston Rockets are a pretty good basketball team. Celtics, obviously, the favorite to win it all. But, I mean, these are 2 good defensive teams, 2 pretty low-paced teams, a low total in this one, a healthy squad on both sides. Feels like more of a fade game to me. But a Jaylen Brown at 7, JB at 7.5, guard forward eligibility. That's the price tag that sticks out most. Then I want you to talk if Whitmore missed. Like Tari Eason, I mean, definitely kind of a low floor. He has a big boy ceiling, though, as he showed in the second game back. I think he's the biggest beneficiary, but I'll let you take this game away. Boston, Houston.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is going to be a fun one. The Rock's been playing great. I'm kind of hoping that, Derek White, actually I take that back. I don't know if I want him out and then the ownership goes up a little bit on Jaylen Brown and Tatum and even Porzingis. But I'll highlight this game as starting right away with Kristaps. I mean, 7K, the Rockets have been giving up a ton of O boards and been getting beat up on the inside recently. We've seen, if a game log watcher, you would take like the last 4 games for Kristaps and see that they're all inside the 20-point mark. But those games were all out of hand, and they're really picky with his minutes. I think this is a game that stays close. And if that's the case at 7K, I mean, you add in the Rockets have been kind of getting beat up on the boards, 7K, minutes getting up into the 30s, like I said in the slate plan. I think I really like him at low ownership. The Tatum stuff, like I also alluded to in the slate plan, I would be more inclined to play him if White is out. But you're right, Jalen's going to get, an honorable mention, if you will, at his price tag. I mean, anytime his price tag comes down into the mid 7s, you kind of want to take a look. They're taking so many threes now. Now, they haven't been efficient over the last couple of games, as we've seen. They've been playing really bad. But with the amount that they take, on the nights that those fall, I mean, they have the opportunity to smash tags. So from the Celtics perspective, I'm all over Kristaps. I want to be on him, whether or not Horford's in or White's in. I think his price tag is just a little too cheap. And then I'm going to bump Tatum and Brown if White is out. Don't really love it if he's in. Then jumping over the Rockets side, like you mentioned, if Whitmore's out, I think this is a spot. I mean, yeah, Eason at 5K, but I think this is a spot where we could see some real increased minutes from all of these starters. So obviously, Amen Thompson, I mean, how fun to watch and his ceiling and just looking at his price tag increase. I mean, I think it was 60 DraftKings points last time out.
Yeah.
At no ownership, right? Because everybody's going to jump over this Celtics stuff. But the Celtics shoot a bunch of threes and this game stays close and that shot doesn't fall. Increase the rebounding. I believe that, they're just going to keep letting him rock and roll. So I really like him. But even the Fred VanVleet, the Jalen Green stuff, not so much. But, he'll fall into that bucket. The Şengün. I mean, we could see all these guys in high 30s minutes in a close matchup. Now, it isn't the most friendly from a fantasy perspective. But if we're getting 37 minutes out of a Fred VanVleet in a back and forth kind of chuck up shot game, I can get behind some of these pieces and real interesting if you're making a ton of lineups at such low ownership.
What about Drew Holiday for like the Derek White stuff? I know you mentioned Tatum, Brown, Porzingis. how big of a bump does Drew get? Like, I'd expect ownership to come up a little bit on him, but I mean, at the end of the day, like the reason I'm asking, I'm a huge Drew guy. I mean, I'm a big Bucks fan. He's just a winner at the end of the day. I hated the trade, but on this team, I've hated him for DFS because he's like the fourth option. Like he plays his role, what he needs to do, but Tatum needs the ball in his hand. Brown needs the ball in his hand. There's Porzingis. So even without Derek White, I don't like have the numbers, like his usage bump, etc. But in my brain, it still doesn't do too much.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I'm being open now about it. I haven't really touched him all season long. And on some of these slates, like it's really hurt me because you'll come in at high ownership at a 5K tag or a 4,800 tag and just whip out like a 31, on DraftKings. And you're just like, damn, dude, like 35% of the field has, a 6X value inside their lineups. But I mean, I could argue he's the fifth option here. If White's out and Hauser steps into the starting lineup, which I would anticipate that's the case over Horford, like he could be just the fifth option, right? And that's going to lead me off of it. Like I agree, if White's out, his ownership spikes, but not really loving it. Like I said, Rockets are kind of tough defensively, especially to these guards. And 5K is enticing, but I'm going to stay away personally at that tag and in the matchup.
Yeah, I agree. I like it. I love your Porzingis shout. I think it's a very strong center play. And there are builds. Like if all these Q tags are somehow in and we don't have any more value, which again, I don't expect that to be the case, but you never know at the end of the day. I don't mind builds that you don't spend over 7 or 10K on any player and you just hammer the mid tier. And you could do that in this game. Porzingis, Amen Thompson. I mean, that dude has been a complete stud with this price tag now. And his projection, like he's just not going to get ownership at this tag for a long time, I don't think. And like, but his 64, 40.
Oh, my bad. What do you think about Amen and then like Jalen and Kristaps? Like, I know it's weird because you're game stacking that game, but you don't have Tatum and you don't have probably one of these value pieces from Boston. Like, I leave like in lineup 25 of your 50. I mean, that's a pretty decent start for a few of them if you're building that mid-tier kind of route.
That's exactly what I was thinking. That's why Tatum falls down the list a little bit. Just, I mean, he's 9.7K. He's competing more at the top guys, where if I didn't play anyone above 10K, I'd totally be fine with a Jaylen Brown, Porzingis, Amen Thompson. Maybe if Derek White's in, like a Porzingis, Amen I'd prefer, or a Jaylen Brown, Amen, like you don't need 3, but I would be fine with 3. And especially if Derek White is out. And again, you're getting on a different build. I think most builds still will spend one person over 10K, and value isn't great on this slate. And Amen showed 60-point upside. Brown's price tag, obviously, 33% usage last game, shot 21 times. He can get you a 50 ball there. You talked in depth about Porzingis, so not a game that's getting ownership.
The last guy I'll mention, too, I'm sorry to interrupt, Fred VanVleet, I mean, we've seen, like, if you're just looking at his last, I mean, 38 and 40, 38, we know this guy gets the minutes. 73 though, man, like, if we get an increased pace, and I'm not saying it like in pace, like Boston's going to run up and down, but when they take as many threes as they do, you find yourself in a bucket of, if they don't go in, right, long shots equal long rebounds, and that leads to transition. Or if the shots go in, then you find yourself a point, the Rockets are playing from behind and the guys have to play and they have to chuck up shots. So I'll even mention him as a secondary play. And I know I've talked a lot about this game and it's so owned, but it's really interesting kind of hinge point on the slate.
No, 100%. And again, the last thing I want to wrap it up. If Cam Whitmore does miss, I do think Tari Eason is someone that will probably be very low owned. I mean, a 22% usage rate, very low owned, power forward eligibility, just 5K. He'd be someone I'd totally be fine adding in as a last piece. Again, on this slate, like, you can, on a 10-game slates with ownership spread out, you can play a lot of chalk. 1-2 pieces that you get a little different, like a Eason, like a Thompson, like pretty much anyone in this game. That's how you can get to the top of leaderboard. So, yeah, did not expect to spend that much time on Houston and Boston, but I do think there's a very couple interesting plays. And again, big questionable tag with Derek White. I saw this most definitely. We talked about it at the top, but I think Jokic is one of the most popular plays on the slate, rightfully so, should be 14K. So there is enough value, even though value isn't like, we don't have like some standout, like Jaden Hardy's of the world with Dallas having nobody, etc. But when Jokic gets you 80, it doesn't really matter. You can figure it out from there. So Let's
And
keep
then
it moving.
to touch on
Yep.
Big Ed stuff as far as Brooks goes, he's just going to fall down like what we kind of talked about with Holiday on the other side. I think he's too far down. Obviously not like a big time scorer, but I think he falls down to, fourth in line, fifth in line, especially Easton off the bench. So 4,700, that's a guy that I would play at like 3,800, not 47.
Yeah, I'd rather go Tari Eason for 300 more. I think he's got more upside, more usage when he is in the game off the bench. All right, let's keep it moving. Next game on the slates, big spread in this one, the Brooklyn Nets and the Sacramento Kings. Kings, 12-point favorites, 226.5 total. No injury news on the Kings side for Brooklyn. No Cam Johnson, no Ben Simmons, otherwise no changes there. Again, looking at the stone for ownership in this, Malik Monk's getting some. Nobody on the Brooklyn side besides D-Russ getting some. I'm going to throw it to you right away because right at first glance, why the heck do I want to play anyone on Brooklyn as 12-point dogs? But D-Russ is popping a little bit. The price tag by no means is cheap. It's $6,400. It fits mid-tier builds. But, I mean, just look at who he's playing with. Keon Johnson, Jalen Wilson, Noah Clowney, Nick Claxton. It's
you got to throw my name in there. I think I'd come off the bench with them.
Exactly. He's playing with nobodies. So he has to be the old D-Russ, if you want to say that, and just the offense is running through him. 29% usage, 33, 22, 27. He's definitely had some solid games in there. Now, any shooting-dependent guard can always bust, as we saw a couple games from D-Russ. So there is some volatility there. He is coming with ownership, though, so I'm really curious to hear your take on that. And then Kings side, I mean, if you're telling me it's a close game, I think Sabonis could nuke. Fox could nuke. Monk could nuke. DeRozan's sub 7K. Is it going to be close is the big question. If you do play one of those studs, would you want to play a D-Russ on the way back, expecting him to keep it close? How do you attack this one?
Yeah, so like I said in the slate plan, it's 12 out of the last 15 that Sabonis has gone over 50 DraftKings points. He flashed the 70. Can't recall if that was double OT. I think it was, but flashed a couple 60s in there. But yeah, to allude to the last thing you said, if you do spend some money on one of these Kings pieces, I would anticipate on a 10-game slate you want somebody coming back from the Nets. So we'll touch with the Nets side. I mean, I feel like in every sport, specifically NBA, we go through these ebbs and flows of ugly plays that consistently get there. Like take NFL, Sutton this year, right? Or Jacoby Myers, right? For a month and a half straight, we're stuck in this mid-tier where you just got to play him. He's in cash games. You're just playing him.
Yeah.
And then even challenge your point a little bit as far as the D-Lo stuff as far as shooting dependent. I mean, his last 5 games, 6 assists, 10 assists, 7 assists, 8 assists,
True.
9 assists. So I don't think it's necessarily so much. I mean, to touch on the defensive stuff, the Kings have given up third. I can't recall if it's second, third, or fourth, the most catch and shoot points this season. But that's the case. I think D-Russ absolutely will be chucking. The assists are up a little bit. So I don't love it. I don't think his ownership gets super high leading up to lock just because the tag. But I really don't mind it. And I agree. It's kind of popping a little bit at 67. I believe this is a game where you're right. He just kind of shoots the ball, hit a couple of shots, and specifically him as a basketball player. When the shot falls, he's shooting again. He's going to attack the rim and find open looks for assists. So I won't put him as a great play, but a secondary play for sure, and especially someone that I want to get to if you are getting to one of these guys on the Kings side. Now for the Kings side, I mean, you can make a case for everybody in the starting lineup. At the ownership, I'm going to take Monk out first at 7K. I know totally different positions, but I'd rather go Kristoff. If you find yourself in a weird swap where you have multiple options, I'd rather go Kristoff's the same price, especially with Monk at almost 20% ownership. I mean, he's going to need, what would you say, 40, at least 40 for you to win a GPP on a 10-game slate if you spend 7K on him.
Yeah.
And with the pace of the Nets, I know they're bad defensively, but the pace I don't think is there. And so I'd rather get him in a pace-up spot. But love the Sabonis stuff. I'll knock Fox. I'll knock Monk. You could make a case for Murray at 5K just because he can shoot the ball and his shot's starting to fall a little bit more than what we saw to start the season. But that's really where I stand. I mean, to touch on a few of those mid-tier Brooklyn pieces, just for the fact that Kings give up so much from the catch and shoot, you could make a case for Wilson at 5-1. His shot has not been falling, but it is basketball, and you go through a couple of games and they don't shoot well and they come back and shoot 80% from the field, because at the end of the day, these guys are NBA players, and there's a reason why they're top 300 guys in the world. So, I wouldn't necessarily highlight him as a play, but if you are game stacking, don't mind him. And even the Keon Johnson stuff at 6K. Big boy price tag at 6K in an ugly game. But the last two, he's gone for 16 shots and 19 shots. So if you're looking to kind of get different pieces, I don't mind any of those guys.
Keegan Murray, you said anyone in the starting lineup's fine, but he has the cheapest price tag of the bunch. To be honest, I think he'd be my favorite on this slate. I think Sabonis would be second. Center is strong. But man, the Fox game log's been tough. Monk's getting the most ownership. DeRozan in this offense, just as more of a scoring dependent guy. I said that about D-Russ. The assists definitely been up. So glad you corrected me there. But I don't see DeRozan getting you 45 very often in this spot. It feels like Keegan Murray at the price tag is my favorites, and Sabonis would probably be second. Not a game I love too much as well, but if I was to play Sabonis, I'd probably play D-Russ. I think D-Russ is fine by himself. And then Keegan Murray, thoughts on him, and how would you rank the Kings starting five, meaning how likely you would be to get to them?
Yeah. Do like I alluded to, the Murray stuff is good at 5K. That shot can fall, and to start the season, I mean, if you look back at last season, we were getting on him because his shot was, he was shooting the ball so well and added some rebounding numbers. And then to start the season, he was kind of like a highlight for these guys that were grinding last season and knew who he was. But didn't shoot well to start the season. 5K, shot starting to fall a little bit. I don't mind that. To rank these guys, I mean, never DeRozan for me. His price is coming down, but with all the options, not really going to get there. So he'll rank last with Fox and Monk. Those guys all kind of bunch up all together, and then it becomes Sabonis over Murray for me, but don't mind at all that you have him 1 and Sabonis 2.
I love it. I love it. Great work as always. Let's keep it rolling. Still plenty of games left to talk about. Appreciate every single one of you 374 watching live. All we ask, appreciate everyone watching on playback too. Like button, subscribe button, helps us out a ton, bringing you shows on this channel every single day. Basketball live shows Monday through Friday. You'll see us on this channel anytime there's 4 games or more. BJ always does the quick hits on Saturday. As far as our premium content, though, we have slate plans, core reports, etc., the Stone, projections, ownership. Every single day there is NBA, NHL still going, MMA, PGA. No better time to join, of course, Super Bowl in 2 weeks. And again, no better deal we have than Ship50. Gets you $50 off your first month. Does include the Shiptimizer as well, and includes Discord access, as does every package except the weekly. But if you do want to try us out, you can try the weekly. I recommend Ship50. Definitely our best value, $50 off.
And to jump into that, take advantage. If you're an NBA guy coming in here on YouTube and the algorithm hit correct and you're with another site or you're thinking about jumping on. I mean, PGA, I love to play golf. I love sweating golf. There's nothing like a Sunday afternoon when football's over, just watching golf all day. I have no idea how to make lineups in that. And I'm 3 for 3 to start the season, just following the Stone, the value reports, the course rankings, the cores. So from a guy that if I was to make a lineup with no information, I wouldn't know where to start. Just loading up PGA information, dude. And I've been lucky enough to run pretty decent in some of this, but not profitable start PGA. So not anything big, but just the fact that you can sweat all week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and not know anything about it and still, be plus EV, it's awesome. So at least at worst case, come check it out for the month.
I'm glad, you brought that up. I always try and be straight up regardless. I think a lot of people do a lot of excellent work throughout the community in all different sports. I think it's not even close. The PGA content at Shipping Nation is by far the best in the industry. I would say it's the strongest of everything we have here. I think that, again, people do a lot of great work in NFL, MMA, NBA, across different sites, people, etc. I think PGA second to none, no doubt. We have the best team over here. DGen, Hoop, Tambo, Lee doing the course fit rankings. Can't forget about Lee, even though he was banned, the UK people in DraftKings. But such a strong team and so many proprietary tools and the game theory wise when it comes to PGA. And Showdown, got to shout out GS Luke. Definitely include him in our golf team as well. His stuff's so money on the Showdown shows, which is on this channel. So, just golf alone, I think it's worth checking out for Ship50. 2 weeks of waste management, huge prize pools. Golf prize pools are always massive. I like the cast streets there, and I'm glad you've had some early success in the golf streets. And for anyone that doesn't know, we have a pretty good real life golfer down here. We were talking pre-show. BJ can hit that ball pretty well. So BJ probably beat me by 65 strokes if I had to guess. But all right, let's keep it rolling.
Hey, real quick, Andrew, I need a new pair of shorts. And Ross, we have not missed the dick debate yet. We're almost there.
There you go. Hey, our man Hebrew Cheetah's still watching. Shout out to Rio. Hope everything's going well, my man. All right, next game on the slate. Usually two teams that I do not have too much interest in targeting. Orlando Magic, Miami Heat. Close spread, 1.5 point favorites are the Magic. 207 total, though. Relative to some of these other ones, definitely the lowest on the slate. Again, totals don't always mean no interest in DFS, though. Injuries trump all, in my opinion. Jalen Suggs is questionable. Big injury tag there. Gogo was questionable, and he got ruled in. As far as the Miami side, Jaime Jaquez, UCLA boy, I know you got to be a fan of Jaime, is questionable. Again, not like a two teams I really like to play at all. Very, very low total. If Suggs is out, maybe you can talk me into something. The one guy, Kalal Ware, 5.9K, center only, which isn't great. But, I mean, besides last game, he only played 23 minutes. He shot poorly from the field, but 35, 38, 33 minutes, 41, 45, 42 DK points. I mean, I would take that at 5.9K, no doubt. Again, center is pretty strong. That's really all I'm looking at in this game. Again, no Jimmy Butler, so that will be updated. But that's been the case. So any thoughts in this one?
Yeah, no, I mean, I make this joke a lot, but like this is like 2015 type, totals back when Boogie was playing for the Kings and stuff like that. So 208, no thanks. I mean, I guess the only guy we'll keep this one short because we spent a little bit too much time on some of the other games. But I mean, you could make a case for Tyler Hero at 83. But that's more of just like Suggs is out type stuff. I mean, then he'll be able to shoot a bunch of threes and Suggs is pretty decent defensively. Waiting for the Franz and the Boncaro stuff to kind of catch up and their minutes be solid. Obviously, extreme efficiency in these last couple of games to have some, good fantasy looking games. But yeah, as a whole on this game, like, no thanks. I mean, you could dive super deep and you look back at some of these matchups for the Heat and like they've given up like tons of transition stuff. That's versus Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Portland, San Antonio. So you could make a note on that, but like the Magic don't do that. So it's going to be a slow 2014 basketball game. Could make a case that neither team scores more than 100 points each.
Yeah, nothing in this one. Call where?
I mean, you can't get behind that. I mean, his price tag, I believe, is caught up to the point where it's like you don't really want to get there. I mean, what a fun guy to like watch and see stat lines of when you're rostering him at like 4K. But no thanks, not for me today.
Yeah, makes sense. It's not one of the worst games on the slate, so not going to spend any more time on that one. Keep it rolling to the next game that's a little more interesting. Still doesn't look like too much ownership, especially on the Grizzlies side. Memphis Grizzlies, New York Knicks, 241.5 total. We just go from a 207 to 241.5. Crazy.
And then in a second, we'll get to 247. So
I know.
Oh, geez.
That's crazy. And shout out to the Boogie reference. I absolutely love it. DFS monster, one of the goats.
What a fun year and a half to roster him, dude. Like you would roster him every night. He'd get his technical foul and he dropped 40 and 18 and get in a fight somewhere. It was awesome.
Oh yeah, one of the DFS goats, no doubt about that. Knicks 3.5 point favorites. Injury report for this one: Santi Aldama, Jake LaRavia questionable for the Memphis side. New York Knicks side, Josh Hart is questionable, unless there's been an update since. But I mean, I feel like he's always questionable, and he always plays.
I was going to say that. Yeah, he's always questionable. He always suits up, and for 41 minutes. So I wouldn't be worried about it at all.
Exactly, and he's coming off a massive 68 DK point night. He always has that in his bag. I mean, 18 boards, 11 rebounds, shot the ball very efficiently, which is when he does hit that ceiling. But dude plays 40 minutes. He stuffs the stat sheets. Price tag, definitely coming up, though. 7.8K, by no means cheap. Karl Anthony Towns has had a phenomenal year in a close game. Expect a lot of minutes there. 9.8K. Another, if I was not spending anyone over 10K, I know Cat's right there at 9.8, but you can build very strong mid-tier builds without completely just stars and kind of scrubbing it at the end of the day. Again, that's all assuming Jokic isn't going for 80 plus, but in non-Jokic builds, I think Towns is very strong, has big boy upside. I don't know, the Brunson stuffs of the world, like just in the past like month, it's just always been Towns over Brunson for me. Just the ceiling feels so much bigger right
like
there.
The whole season, I believe that's the whole season type thing.
100%. So, I mean, Memphis side really tough for me to get to much. Knicks a little more interesting, but not too much for me. What about you?
Yeah, what a fun game, and I'm gonna like love the Knicks side, and I'll get to that in a sec. But really tough for me on the Grizzlies side. I mean, all these guys are priced fairly, and it's tough because the matchup and a close game and the total makes you want to get to it and think of getting game stacks. But you're going to be really contrarian in that aspect. You could make a case for Job. It scare me though, and Bane's too much, and Jackson so much. The real fun side that I have is going to be on the Knicks side, and I'm stealing what Rio has said a lot on some of these shows. But you're going to want like one of these guys in your roster to help you propel you to the top. So we'll start with the Brunson stuff. Brunson's the only guy that I don't want to play of these other four guys. Like Brunson at 88. Not only hasn't really been fun to roster this season, but the Grizzlies do really well taking away the ball handler in the pick and roll. And it's going to give a bunch of opportunities to Bridges, Hart, OG, and then Cat will be his own discussion. But if we're talking about Bridges, Hart, and OG as a bucket, like all together, like I said in the slate plan, it's going to be like contingent upon like what you think they could take advantage of in this game. So because of the strong defensive presence on the pick and roll, like Bridges is going to have open looks, like Hart's going to have open looks. OG is going to have looks where he can attack the rim. I'm going to rank it Hart just because of the peripheral stats. Obviously he shot well, but so did Bridges and OG. So if you go back to the last game, I think they put up like 143 points or whatever. They all shot lights out. So if that continues, obviously Hart is going to be a smash for me with his triple-double upside, followed by Bridges at 63. And, he can shoot the ball well from three. And I think OG is going to be more of that stuff, getting the ball in those open looks and being able to attack the rim. So that's how I rank those three. But I don't think you could go wrong with any of those guys. And then getting to the Cat stuff, like I said, sub 10K, you're going to want to roster him every time. I believe this is a situation where he can get Zach Edey on the other side in foul trouble. If that's the case, I mean, he's going to tear up, JJJ and Brandon Clark on the other side. So definitely Cat over LeBron, as I'm seeing from William over there. But if it is a mellow lineup, you make the decision if you do want to game stack that. But just from a 1v1 kind of swap, I'm going Cat and his 65-point upside in this matchup.
Yeah, I said the exact same thing. Even with like LaMelo, I'd go Cat. And if you do want the game stack, I'd go up to AD from Cat, try and find a couple extra dollars there. But regardless, like LaMelo is going to chuck. AD will get his. LeBron can get some. Game stacking, it's fine in NBA. Like more so even on smaller slates, I give it more of a bump where like the OT can be even bigger. But like LaMelo's going to do his thing. There's no doubt he's going to be chucking. Like he doesn't need a LeBron, an AD, like any of those guys to push him. He's going to do his thing at the end of the day. LeBron has other mouths he's competing with at the price tag on the team. So I would still go Cat there, and I wouldn't worry about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's keep it rolling. Not much in that one. And this next one is definitely big for DFS. It's 7:30 p.m. Eastern, mainly talking on one side, and that's the Raptors. But 1-point favorites are the Raptors taking on the New Orleans Pelicans. Or actually, it's 2.5 now for the Pelicans. That's interesting. So we had this, again, this is in the morning.
That's interesting. So what did open and what is it now?
It's 2.5 Pelicans. Is that saying Jakob Poeltl is going to be missing?
I was going to mention that. Unfortunately, that's what I would assume. Like, I would be the farthest thing from like line analysis, but that would be the only thing that I could kind of come up with off the top of my head.
Me too. And again, this is done in the morning. And yeah, the current lines I always have up right now. So Raptors were 1-point favorites. Now 2.5 for the Pelicans. Yeah, why we mentioned that's big. No injury news on the Pelican side. Jakob Poeltl's questionable on the Toronto side. And that's the biggest injury news, I think, on the slate.
Did Murray get announced in? Because he was questionable. Did I miss that?
I
don't know. I saw that this morning. I'm unaware to know if he is going to play or not. That would kind of change some stuff, in my opinion. But curious about that. Let me take a peek as well.
Yeah, I'll throw it to here. Just give me 1 sec. I'll look at that when you're talking this one. So Jakob Poeltl's questionable. O'Shea Abaji's questionable. Kelly Olynyk's questionable. If Jakob Poeltl, someone in chat he's in. Okay, thank you.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, Mercier. Thank you, Luis. If Jakob Poeltl's in, I think he's a strong play at 6.5K. If he's out, as people keep saying, Boucher, I think Chris Boucher would be probably the most popular play on the slate, or he would be, assuming he is starting, if he does get the starting nod. He also, 3.7K, has power forward eligibility, which is huge. Power forward and center, but that could allow you to get like a Boucher, Jokic, Cat. And if that stuff happens, like you're able to spend even a little more, and that's a little harder to get away from Yoke, but there's enough spend-ups on the slate, this Big Ten game where you can. But this news, again, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully we do get it before lock. Huge news for Jakob Poeltl. Grady Dick, don't have much value on the slate. 4.2K. I think he's interesting. Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett. Almost all the ownership in this and all my appeal is on the Raptors side. Tough for me to get to these Pelicans. Like Trey Murphy, he's been hooping. He's $8,200 now, though. Like, big boy price tag. Him and Amin Thompson, shout out to them. Guys that started the year way cheaper than they've got to. He's really grown his bag. But, I mean, we play a salary-based game. Those salaries on the Pelican side a little too big for me. But, yeah, touch on Raptors. It's, I think, a lot of viable plays.
Yeah, no. So I'll start with the Raptors. I agree. That's like my only side that I want to approach in this game. Toronto's been like sneaky good since putting Mitchell back, defensively sneaky good since putting Mitchell back in the starting lineup with the Quickly injury, obviously. So it's a bummer. Our man Patel, shout out if Hebrew's still in here, but Poeltl at 65, because he was going to be one of my favorite plays, and that was going to be a way that I was going to get different on the slate if you were fading Joker to go like a Poeltl, Kristaps kind of double center mid-tier kind of build. But all these guys are in play aside from Mitchell. I don't want to roster Mitchell. He's just, as you can see, he's 0.68 fantasy point per minute producer. If you're creating value, absolutely Grady Dick's in play at 4,200. I'm waiting for him to like finish a game though. Like a couple times out of go, like 3 steals, had a bunch of points in the first quarter. I believe he had like 4 fantasy points the rest of the 3 quarters. But bump Scotty Barnes at 93. RJ Barrett's like his shot, volume has come down over the last few. So at 7,700, he was leading in a lot of those categories a few weeks ago. Those have come down a bit. 7,700 might be a little tough for me. And then if Poeltl is out, Boucher doesn't even need to start to be able to become good value on the slate. Like, I don't believe the last time out, he didn't even come in until the start of the second quarter. And he still put up like 32 fantasy points in 20 some odd minutes. He was owned that time, so it kind of, changed some stuff. But no, I'm all on the Raptors side. And then as far as the Pelican sides goes, like if Murray's in, that's unfortunate because I agree with you. You could have made a case for some of this Trey Murphy stuff with Murray out and Zion off of the bench on the bench during some of that game. I mean, there was like 4 or 5 straight possessions where he would just come up the floor and just didn't even think about passing. And I know 82's, was a tough price tag, but he would have been playing a ton of lineups. But Murray's in, so no. Game environment seems really good. But, Pelicans prices and how good Toronto's been defensively with Mitchell back in is going to lead me off. But hoping Poeltl is in. If that's the case, I want to play him. If not, you can make a case for any of these guys.
I love it. Great breakdown. We have 3 games left, so we're going to keep it moving. And a lot of these games, you're probably seeing like really low ownership. Well, that's because we get to this Nugget situation, and they are getting a ton of ownership, as you can see. The Jokic, Westies, Murrays, Michael Porter Jr.'s of the world. Both sides getting some ownership too. So if there was one game that what's the chalk, it's by far this game. And again, it's 8 p.m. Eastern. There is still Q tags like the Jakob Poeltl. We don't know for sure. The line has moved. Don't just assume for sure he's out. Hopefully we do get it before lock. But this game, 8 p.m. Eastern, no doubt will be in a lot of people's teams. And also, like if we don't get the Jakob Poeltl news or we get it right at 7, you're more likely to have, because there's only 2 games that lock at 7. You will have a lot of roster spots probably available. Obviously, always make sure your latest spots in guard, util, etc., to be able to swap around. But wanted to make that note. No doubt Nuggets. Bulls, one of the most popular games on the slate. With all that being said, I mean, big boy spread, 9.5 points for the Nuggets, 248 total. That's what you were talking about right there. Looking at the pace, Rio's talked about it all year. Chicago team, you do want to pick on 101 for the Nuggets. Also a solid pace there. Injuries in this one, nothing on the Denver side. Kobe White is out for the Bulls, though. Again, I mean, I'll just throw it to you right away. Like Nuggets, Jamal, Westy, Jokic, MPJ, all look strong. All are getting ownership. Throw Aaron Gordon in there at 4.2K. Bulls side, no Kobe White, Lonzo, Levine, Giddey, Pat Williams. I want you to talk about Patrick Williams, actually. So start with the Bulls. I'm seeing some value or some ownership on him at 3.8K. Again, due to the lack of value, if a Boucher was to start and there was no Jakob Poeltl, I bet you a lot of that Pat Williams ownership would come down. Boucher would go up, and rightfully so. But just like every single Q tag was ruled in or no good value opened up. Like, is this okay value? Is this chalk donkey value? Like, what's going on with Pat Will and the Bulls?
Yeah, it just kind of falls into like how you're making your lineups, in my opinion. Like, so if you have multiple pieces from this game, like I wouldn't mind getting the value, with Patrick Williams, but I would throw that into the bucket of like creative value, like bordering on like, hey man, realistically, what does he have to do? He shoots threes, he has to hit a couple of threes, and how many game flows do we see where like he gets hot from three and like gets some rebounds? So I'll call it creative value. I think we are going to get some value. Absolutely, Boucher, way, far and few between. A much better play than Patrick Williams. But I guess before I dive into the game, I have my take on it, and I want to hear yours. With such a high total, obviously 9.5 doesn't scare me. Like, when we're talking about this game, like obviously that's the easy answer is like, well, it's such a high total, it doesn't matter. But in a 250 total, when it's a 10-point spread or a 9-point spread, I mean, we're going to see runs where each team may be up 10, 15 points each side, and there's going to keep going back and forth. So spread does not bother me at all. I'm just going off the total in general. You mentioned it, love the Murray stuff. Obviously, Joker is not going to be 26% in my opinion. I think he's going to get to like 35-ish. Honorable mention to Russell Westbrook on the Nuggets side, but you can play anybody in this game. So a couple of quick notes to kind of like help you kind of distinguish what plays are your favorite in this. Like the Nuggets, obviously with Joker have the most rim possessions. So like that's a kind of an easy one to throw out. Bulls obviously giving up second most transition points and a ton of catch and shoots. So that's going to bump, Murray and Westbrook, maybe even, Porter Jr. at 56. And the Nuggets are giving up a ton of catch and shoots to the Bulls side, which they're first at in the league. So, yeah, from the guards perspective, Murray and Westbrook, and then Porter is probably going to be my ranking there. But just an absolute possible like smash spot here for Murray at 7,200, especially if you aren't getting to Joker. And then jumping over to the Bulls side, I wrote up Vooch, and Vooch is actually going to be my favorite play of the Bulls, even though like the team stats don't really suggest that. I've been on record the last week or so thinking that they're trying to shop him for a trade. I think we have a week and a half, a week until the trade deadline. So I think they're going to focus on that. I think Joker, as Rio and I have talked about on shows, and I've agreed with, is that Joker gives up on defense because he has to produce on the offensive end. So I believe he gets better looks there. We do know Vooch has the potential to hit multiple threes in a game, so that's going to bump him up for me. And I think in this transition game, we're going to get a couple of increased, rebound opportunities for Vooch. If you're not going Vooch because you don't want to eat up another center spot, then it's going to be Giddey and it's going to be Levine, in my opinion. Not so much on the Lonzo stuff personally, but Giddey is getting the minutes that we did not see when Kobe White was in the lineup. And at 71, we know he fills up all the buckets as far as stats goes. So I'll check the box there. And this just feels like not only from like a defensive team defensive team like statistical side from the Nuggets giving up catch and shoots, like this just feels like a game where you're going to see Levine like throw up like 6 or 7 like transition shots where they just throw up to him and he takes no dribbles and just is able to get up a shot. So at that price tag, obviously it's a big boy tag, but if that shot falls, I mean, we could see like 30, 40 real life points of Levine if this game stays close. So I'm going to bump him there. But to kind of finish before I throw it back to you, Love the guard stuff from the Nuggets. Obviously, Joker's in play. I ranked him like Murray, Westbrook, Porter, in my opinion, on that side. And then jumping over the other side, it's going to be Vooch a little bit ahead of these guards to get different. But if you don't want to eat at the center spot, it's going to be Levine over Giddey, but both those guys are great plays. And then the Patrick Williams stuff, I think we're creating a little too much value there, especially if we find ourselves with like Nance Jr., a Wallace for the Hawks, Chris Boucher to get the start. I think that's going to really fall down my list.
I like it. Great breakdown. Back to your point, like with the spread, the total of that. I also hate like trying to predict blowouts because it's 9.5. If it's a 9-point game with 5 minutes left, all the starters are going to be in at the end of the day. And again, like part of that 9.5 points, again, the algorithm, all that is so sharp, like a backdoor cover, like it could be 19 with 8 minutes left. The Bulls have their guys out a little more, the Nuggets don't, and they backdoor the 9.5. And then, yeah, obviously they cover, but you don't get the run and it doesn't paint a true picture. But trying to predict blowouts, like it's really, really tough for me. So I wouldn't even worry. And to be honest, I like the idea of making a rule, minimum one Jamal, Westbrook, MPJ, Jokic on this slate. The reason for that is I just have a very hard time seeing all of them bust. Like if they're getting there, like and they're completely blowing them out, I think one of these guys are doing it. Whether Jokic is being passive and it's a Murray game, Westy's price tag's fair, MPJ's price tag's fair, or if it's Jokic, like he's going to be the most popular, but rightfully so.
What do you think? Oh, my bad. What do you think is like the minimum? Let's say the Nuggets blow out the Bulls. The game isn't close. What's the minimum point value you need from Joker to feel good about 12K?
The thing is, because on this slate, there's AD, there's LaMelo, there's just a billion spends on the slates. I think you still want like a 68 piece.
Yeah, I was going to say like 70, 71. So it's like right around that like zone, which we've seen him do in 3 quarters for sure, obviously. But that's really going to make me rethink that. We're just like, it's just tough, especially getting him at 40. But there's nothing like fading Joker, and he just puts up 27 in the first quarter. And you're just like,
he's the worst to fade. He is so good at basketball, no doubt. But I mean, he's coming one of the most popular plays on the slate, the most popular spend. So at least when you do see that, it's a little easier to stomach. Like Jokic, what, he was 20% when he went for 99 or something. Like he's not always the most popular, but today, like he should be 13K plus on this slate in a perfect game environment. So
that's what I thought they were going to do. That's why I was so like kind of bummed to come in and see 12K, or like it just didn't move. Now they get Chicago. Chicago's not the team to stop them, obviously. So couldn't agree more. And I love what you said about getting minimum one of those Nuggets guys. Cause I mean, have we seen a team total at, as high as 127? We've seen a lot of like 121s, 120s this season, but almost 130, man. Like that's a big boy team total. For sure.
And I mean, as you can see, I'm the biggest Giannis guy there is. I love Giannis in the Bucks. I think he's number 2, but as far as I think Jokic is a better basketball player at the end of the day. The double teams he creates, what he does for his team. I mean, you're arguing 2 of the best though, so I'll never argue that. But yeah, it's Jokic for me if I had to pick. What are your thoughts on that before we get to the next?
I don't know. I'm going to piss you off a little bit. I think I've been open in the chat a couple times. Nate's and I have gone back, but I hate watching Giannis play, man. I don't know what it is. It's like every time he gets the ball, it's like you see these travels, and like for me personally, from like a fundamentalist, you're like, damn, dude, he's in the NBA and he's so physically gifted. But it's like when you see like Joker, for example, like exactly what you said. Look at these passes he makes. Like look at the vision and the basketball IQ that he has. And not saying Giannis like isn't that. Well, I mean, I am saying that. Like I don't think Giannis
he's not on that level.
No, not at all.
IQ-wise.
But yeah, it's just like the IQ and like the whole persona he has. It's like, damn, dude, his brothers are in the stands. Like, he takes the whole summers off. You're like, how do you not like this guy? You know what I mean? So anyways, Joker, wherever Giannis for me, and the Giannis discussion is totally for another day over beers or whatever. But yeah.
That makes sense. Jokic is IQ second to none. That's for sure. He's so fun to watch. All right, let's keep it rolling. We have 2 games left on the slate. Atlanta Hawks taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. 218 total. Another big spread in this one. Timberwolves 10.5-point favorites. The reason for that, no injuries on the Minnesota side besides Dante will be out for a while. Hawks side, though, the same cannot be said. No Trae Young, no Jalen Johnson, DeAndre Hunter, Larry Nance, and Zachary Reishashire, all questionable.
I was gonna look to see if we got any of that news yet. I don't think we did, but just in case we have a lean somewhere, I don't see anything. But that is a later game, so I don't think we're gonna get it right away. But this is huge, that injury news.
Yes, most definitely. So I'll just throw it to you right away, because if all those guys are in, like, I don't think this game really gets much ownership. If some of those guys are out, again, they're already without Trey, they're already without Jalen Johnson. The thing is, like, Dyson Daniels is already priced up a good bit. Okongwu's priced up a good bit. The other guys, not so much. Like, if they lose a Larry Nance as well, a Reishashire, like, they are going to be thin. Some of these guys, I feel like, not necessarily have to get there, but they most definitely feel like they have to be in play. Do you have leans on any of these Hawks guys? I know you mentioned like Keaton Wallace a little earlier, Larry Nance. Are you kind of not necessarily backloading, because a lot of people will play the Nuggets game, which is the same time, but kind of just waiting on that Christie value early and stuff? You don't want to lock in to hopefully get better stuff later with the Hawks. And then I don't have interest Timberwolves, but talk about it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think now that you bring it up, like, that even changes my whole perspective. You can get into any of this early value because you can create it here on the T-Wolves side. So, like, if you take like Nance at 35 and you take Wallace at 38, which I would assume like one of these three guys are out as far as Nance, Hunter, and Ricochet. But let's say they're all in. Well, you can get your swaps to, we saw, Rob Dillingham note from Hebrew in the chat, the NAW stuff at 3,400. Like, I believe you could just kind of swap there. Now, it's not great, but, they are going to get the minutes, and I don't think you're fully killed. So that's where I'll kind of stand as far as the value goes. I'm curious to see what they do with Wallace, at 3,800, if he does get the start. I mean, he had his spot start, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and had like 27, 6, and 6. I believe that was a matchup with the Bulls, so that's a little bit different than the Timberwolves on the other side. But not anything I love. Like, I'm not going to get to anybody really aside from this value, and it's just going to be Wallace and hopefully Nance. I mean, Nance went 2 for 10 in 20 minutes the last time out, where he kind of burned some people. But I mean, at 3,500, if he gets those shots to fall, I mean, we could see upside there, which we've seen before this season. But I don't want to spend anything more than like 4K on this game. I think the highest I'll go is Ricochet at 4,100. Now, he's been out a little bit, so that makes me want to not even think about it. But that would be the highest I'll go in this game. The Hawks have been really bad on offense. They're giving up a ton of points on the rim. Like, this isn't going to be a close game. And then jumping over to the Timberwolves side, I did touch on Ant a little bit inside the slate plan, but that was just more of like, I think this could be like an FU game for Ant, where like you see, like, as the night ends, you see your Twitter notification from Underdog, like, Ant goes for 47, it just like feels like one of those nights and one of those matchups where he's going to shoot, he's going to shoot a lot. As long as this game stays within 20 points, I think he's in the game. 9,200 is a big boy tag, and there's a lot of other options. But, if you're making a ton of lineups, I mean, a 4, 5, 6% own Anthony Edwards running back with some Hawks value pieces that are going to be blowout proof, and Ant goes for his 41 real life. I mean, that'd be a fun little lineup to have. But jumping away from Ant as far as we go on T-Wolves value, Jaden McDaniels, 53's price is getting up, and it's kind of falls into that kind of no man's land where, like, you don't want to call him value, but you don't want to call him mid-tier. He's getting all the minutes he can handle. And, this was a guy that we played a lot last season in the playoffs and kind of showed his upside when he has the minutes. I wouldn't call it upside, but I like a very increased floor, like to be able to like print 30-point games as far as fantasy points goes. Like, he's getting the minutes and his shot's starting to fall a little bit. I think I wrote in the slate plan, he's like 16 for 26 or something like that over his last two. Like, I'd have to double check if I'm talking about the right guy, because there's a lot of plays today. But he's getting a ton of minutes. I don't mind him. I mentioned, if the rim stuff for the Hawks, if you think this game stays any bit close, I would take a look at Julius Randle at 76 and then Gobert at 58. Both ugly plays in ugly spots with ugly spreads. But one of these guys could, have a ceiling game if the Hawks just, don't or aren't good at giving up. Aren't good defensively at the rim. There is a little bit upside there, but don't love it. And then the NAW stuff, coming off the bench at 34 with no Dante. I mean, he's more of a creating value type piece, and I want to get off probably if he's at 15% ownership. but minutes in the 20s, and kind of playing in that spot, tough to get off.
Yeah, two things. Jaden McDaniels, I did wish I mentioned him. I almost mention him on every show, especially when value is pretty tough. I mean, the dude, like when I say hooper, usually I'm more talking offensive game. This dude's just a winning basketball player, and so long, so athletic, so good on the defensive end, so good in transition. He just finds us like so many minutes. He's always around the ball. He just finds his way to get into points without needing the scoring. So I definitely like Jaden McDaniels at that price tag. And then last thing to wrap up this game, do you worry? It's more, I guess, just broad overview. Like Dyson Daniels, very, very highly respected defender, will definitely be on Ant. Do you worry about any of that stuff at all? Obviously, there's so much pick and roll, one-on-one Ant against Daniels, like give me the better O over D. But there's no doubt Daniels is going to probably pick him up full court like he usually does and try and make him cross over at least 4 or 5 times, which takes him out of the shot clock, et cetera. So any just thoughts on that?
Yeah, if you're like a guy that like focuses like ton on matchups, I would like to believe like I'm kind of both. Like you watch a game and you're like, oh damn, like that guy's a hooper. I know ball, if you will, but you also want to kind of counteract that with statistics. I would consider myself kind of like, what would it be, that like political, like far right, far left. I'm like independent on that, right? Like I take a little bit of both, right? But if you're like statistics guy, absolutely, you're like, bro, the spread, the total, there's no way the Hawks stay in it. Dyson Daniels on the other side, like that matchup is so tough. Like I would agree with you. Like, damn, no way on Ant. If you're like the other side where you're like, nah, man, Ant's been shooting the ball and like he's gonna like step up in this matchup and he wants to like, go score points. Doesn't matter who it is, he's matchup proof. Then you line up on the side where like he goes off for 40. But that's where it's kind of like in the middle. So I could see both sides. Like I would agree with both sides, but as of tonight, like I think like this would be like a step up spot for Ant where he's like, let me go see how many points I can score type stuff.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I love that breakdown. I love the comparisons and everything. So last game on the slates. Again, there is 2 more on FanDuel. We will not be covering that though. It is on the Stone. We'll have projections for it. Only 10 games on DraftKings though. This is the last 8:30 p.m. Eastern, the only 8:30 p.m. Eastern game. Washington Wizards, the Dallas Mavericks. 231.5 total, 12.5 point favorites are the Mavs. Looking at injury report on this one, no notable injury news on both sides of the ball. Like there's no Najee Marshall, no Maxi Kleba. Obviously, Lively's still been out, but really no changes and no big injury news that we're waiting on this. Another big spread, which is kind of the story on the slate with a lot of these games. With that being said, though, pretty solid pace on both sides. We're seeing ownership on both sides as well. Talking center, Gafford's one of the strongest center plays on the slate, right in the mid-tier. Obviously, without Lively, you're finally seeing a low 30s, mid-30s minutes. Anytime the dude gets minutes, he's a point-per-minute monster. Very good matchup for him in this one as well. PJ Washington, I think, has a fair tag. Not many are going to go to Kyrie. Like, give me, personally, Kyrie over Ant today. Pretty similar price tags. Curious to hear your thoughts there. Jordan Poole, I never hate it because he always has that slate breaking upside. This is a game I think you can get a little creative with, play multiple pieces, and also what that does is like the Denver game strong, this game strong. It allows you to wait for more of that injury news like Hawk stuff, or if Jakob Poeltl news doesn't come out near the first games, etc., where you could have a lot of flexibility. These last couple games, pretty strong. So, I mean, I didn't even mention Washington side, like, I mentioned Poole, but even Kuzma, 6'4". Keyshawn George for some value. Alexander Sarr. I think you could get like 4 guys in this game and be fine. So, yeah, good game to wrap it up. What do you got?
Yeah, touch on the Kuzma stuff. I don't know if you saw the quote, but he was talking about how like he's not on the floor to help guys develop or something. I'm taking that out of context a little bit, but crazy statement from, a guy that like was developed on the Lakers, right? To go out and do that. But anyways, no, man, couldn't agree more. This is like exactly what you said, a creative way to get going. So we'll start with the Mavericks side. Like for me personally, like absolutely, like I think what makes me lean Ant a little bit more, I'm not saying to play this because like the way that I'm going to build lineups tonight, like I probably won't fall into either one of these guys, like if you're making 1 to 5. But I think Kyrie's going to be like more owned, like especially like in like not the higher dollar stuff, but like kind of in like the 3 max, the single entry, like take the the 555 or the 250, what is it, a 3 max? The 203 max, sorry. I think he's going to be higher owned. The Wizards are really bad versus pick and roll, and like that's where Kyrie's going to get his assists and score out of. So I think like kind of in the smaller field stuff, he'll be more owned, which kind of leads me to get off of him and play like the route that the Mavericks, kind of run this team out of the building. The Gafford stuff at 67, like it's really hard because it's the Wizards. He is getting the run. He's been so productive. I mean, he even threw in a 72-point DraftKings night. But if you're diving in deeper to that, like, yes, his ownership will be at this 30%. It might even be higher. If you look at these game logs, like he's 50% from the field his last time out, but then he was like 5 for 6, 6 for 11, 12 for 15, 2 for 3, 12 for 13 from the field. Obviously, like he's around the basket. So like we can anticipate those shots to be like very efficient, but like how sustainable is like 12 for 15 from the field with 15 boards? Like in that game, he did have 7 blocks. That's what increased it. But that's where I'm kind of falling into the boat of like, he's an honorable mention in the mid tier, in my opinion, because of ownership and because of his tag. Now he's been great, but like to finish, how sustainable? So that's where I'll kind of land. Like I would much rather like get a little bit different. It isn't crazy different, but I think I'd rather go PJ Washington for $200 more. And then jumping over the Wizards side, of course, like to agree with you, anytime Jordan Poole's under 7K, like I'm going to have interest or like a concern of whether rostering him or not, just because he continually shows us 50-point upside and like his ability to shoot the basketball. Not really on the Kuzma stuff and not really on the SAR stuff. Like I know Kuz like shoots the ball a lot, but like he is going to have some looks at the rim, and the Mavs have been really good with Gafford down there over the last couple of weeks at the rim. So I'm kind of going to be off both of those guys. You can get behind Koulibaly too. I mean, like if you think this game stays close, like he gets huge minutes, but don't love it. And then like I wrote in the Slate plan, it's like an everyday thing to like consider rostering Bub Carrington and Keyshawn George just because of the minutes. And it's disgusting, dude. You're like saying like, here we go again, like a 4K Bub Carrington. I think he's cheaper than that today, but like, you're just sitting there staring at it. And you're like, well, his value's okay. And like, here we go. But I think this is a night, if we don't get the value, both those guys are in play. Like, I think Keyshawn George gets a little bit more run in blowouts. So like, if you're playing the blowout, I would lean him a little bit, but both those guys getting good minutes, not the most productive, but if there is no value, I would highlight both of those guys.
Yeah. Like if the Hawk stuff doesn't work out how you want, like those guys are definitely fine. Rio loves Bub Carrington. He strokes him every time he's on the show. So you're totally fine going there. And Keyshawn George, small forward, power forward, whereas Carrington, point guard, shooting guard. Awesome breakdown there. I just had one other thing, and again, kind of more general, but like revenge stuff. Today, Daniel Gafford, he wakes up. And again, I think every situation's different, but in general, like, does he have extra motivation today? And even if you do, as like a point guard, you have the ball in your hand. You can dictate how many shots you're doing. Like baseball, I don't believe in that stuff at all. Like the pitcher's going to try as hard as he can. The hitter's always going to try, like regardless. Basketball, you can dictate more, especially as a guard. Now, as a big man like Gafford, maybe you can give a little more effort, but that's insinuating you didn't give as much effort before in other games. Like they're not going to low post Gafford more than usual. So just any thoughts, I guess, in general? Does it differ from guard to center? Again, we got through all 10 games. Awesome stuff. But just thoughts on that before we get out of here.
It's really funny because usually no. And I could agree more, like specifically as like a post guy or like a power forward guy, like you don't have the ball when you cross half court to be able to like launch up 2 really bad like heat check threes, right? You're kind of down low. And I mean, as a big, especially like competing for like the starting center, on this team with Lively when he does come back, I think you're playing hard every time. My question to kind of allude back to you, would we consider Kyrie the revenge guy stomping on Boston's logo, doing stuff like that, to where he's like, hey man, like I'm going to get you a few extra looks tonight, right? Because that would be it, right? If they're like bad versus pick and roll, Kyrie can just be like, yo, dude, I'm going to get you out the rim like 7 times in the first half, right? And I think you would put Kyrie in that bucket, which is the funny part. So, I mean, yeah, I can see it, but I don't think I'm going to roster him based off revenge at that tag and being the post guy. But it is going to be funny, like, if the game starts and it's like the first play is like the pick and roll oop to Gafford for a dunk, right? And you're just kind of like, oh, one is that easy, but Kyrie's just like, I'm going to go get you like 20 points at the rim tonight. Because I think Kyrie is that guy. But usually, no, I agree with the baseball stuff. Like, baseball's too freaking hard to have all that, extra motivation. But I think in that particular situation, like, I'm not going to highlight that it's a revenge game for him.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. And I like the point on Kyrie. I never thought about it. The thing is, I mean, he's one of the most popular plays on the slate at 30%. So it's like you need an added bonus to roster him. Just always like asking people on the shows, baseball, I always ask BVP stuff. If you've seen pitchers multiple times, what it does, et cetera. So always like just the thoughts there. No right answer, of course. I don't know if there ever will be. But last thing I wanted to mention, we thought Grady Dick was in play. By no means a must, though. But honestly, without too much value, that's
the creating bucket or the creative value bucket for me. Like, hey, you could see it. He could hit shots, but like you're not like running to the window to lock in like a possible like 4X type guy,
This has to be a chirp, Hedwig from the movie. That cannot be a compliment, etc. Though I said it right, etc. Come on. Final thoughts from you.
I don't even know who that would be. Is that the main character from Split?
Yes, that's not the guy you want to be.
No, that's crazy.
That's definitely a chirp, but etc. I got it. Any that was really struggling. I think it was the word etc. One of the words I was completely struggling with, but a couple shows ago. Anyway. Final thoughts, BJ. Awesome work as always. Hour 20 talking this 10-game slate. Again, BJ has a slate plan up. Mad props to you. Digging deep, like our man Rio as well. You have a core report every single day. A lot of the times you'll be looking up at BJ's name ahead of you in the leaderboards. But final thoughts, BJ. Great work as always.
Thanks, man. Not really. Like, I'll kind of finish with this. Like, this would be the night, like, to get a little bit different in my opinion. And what I mean by that is like some of these game stacking spots, like everybody's going to like throw in the Joker and the Gafford. Like I'm curious to see what percentage of lineups have a Gafford Joker mix and just eat up 2 centers out of that. So this would be my kind of spot. Like I highlighted a few games early. Like I think the Laker game is like sneaky, like not 1-5, but like you really got to contemplate, like you could get some big games out of those guys. Like looking at other games, like you could make a case for the Pistons to stay in the game with how bad the Cavs have been defensively, and that want to bump you on some low-owned Cavs guys. So that's kind of where I stand. Like, don't fall in. Obviously, we don't have any crazy value where it's like easy enough to be like, hey, this guy's starting, so I'm going to play his backup and get 60% leverage on the field. But like, I think this would be a night to get a little bit different in game stacks because some of these games are so low owned. And like we said, like, look at the Celtics game. Like that could be a back and forth great game that like people are scared away because of the defensive efficiency, but you're going to get a whole game at like 5%. So that's where I'll kind of leave my thoughts for the slate. Like don't get too honed in on like a game or a set of players.
Absolutely love it. And again, a lot of these games, 2 at 7, couple at 7:30, 8, 8:30, 7 games don't look too strong. Some injury news we will be waiting on. Again, the Pirtle stuff, pretty big. A lot of Q-tags. Derek White should get a lot of it, I think, before lock, but we're never guaranteed to. And a lot of the games that look to have the most ownership, 8 p.m., Denver, Chicago, 8:30, Washington, Dallas. Again, you can mix in a couple plays early, but those late games, you should have probably in a lot of your lineups, a lot of roster spots available to navigate. Again, projections, ownership will be updated throughout. Any core report changes you will see in yellow. Stone gets updated as well. Again, no better time to get over. Ship 50, our best deal out there. Gets you $50 off your first month. Also does include Shiptimizer. I'll be back tomorrow with my man Rio. BJ, awesome stuff. Always enjoy talking sports with you. Good luck tonight to you. Good luck to everybody out there. We appreciate you watching. Hit that like, hit that subscribe on the way out. For BJ, I'm Titletown. Be safe. Peace. Good luck.